Hello world, welcome back to another episode of Candid Questions. So excited about this one, but before I jump right into it, I would like to say hi to everyone who's tuning into this podcast for the first time. You might be wondering what this is all about, and really, Candid Questions is just about broadening your perspectives on life, pumping up your energy levels, inspiring you to make the changes in your life that you have been wanting to make or that you have been wondering how to make. And these deep dive conversations are really here to give you that insight that you need to get going. So enjoy. This is a particularly sweet and short episode, and it is on a very, very important topic, sexuality, and how it relates to our identity. And I specifically chose a teenager to speak about her take on sexuality and identity, because I believe that in today's world, the younger generation really has a very amazing view of sexuality. So jump in, enjoy, let us know what you really think about it, what your takeaways were from this short episode, and speak soon.
Okay, here we are live for another episode of Candid Questions with Nomzamo Lindner. Hi, Nomzi.
Hello.
I'm sorry if my voice sounds crazy today, but I have a bad cold, so you all have to bear with me, please.
Of course.
So I'm super excited to have you here, Nomzi, and today we want to talk about so many things, but mainly about sexuality and identity, which is a very dear topic to your heart as well.
Yes, very much.
But before we jump into this whole conversation, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, my name is Nomzamo Lindner. I usually go by Nomzi because it's easier for most people to pronounce. And I am a student at school.
How old are you now, Nomzi?
13, but nearly 14.
Yes, in a few days you're turning 14 years. Wow.
Yes.
Anyway, we want to talk about sexuality. So let's see where that topic takes us today. But can you tell me when you started to think about this topic, when it started sort of being relevant to you?
Well, it's always been something normal to me because of the people I grew up with. It was just never all that much present in my mind when I was younger. I think then maybe 2 years ago or something, I started thinking a bit more about it because, on the internet, I'd see things about the, community, about the flags. And I thought it was really interesting. And I really liked the idea of flags. I was really curious about them. And then over the last year, I started looking more into it. I started seeing more videos about it. So yeah, I'd say mainly I really got into thinking about the community, thinking about really what it means and everything a good 2 years ago.
And it was mainly through the internet that you came across the topic.
Yeah.
And why do you think the whole LGBTQIA plus community was so interesting for you?
I don't know. I just think that the struggles are really interesting to see because I find it really hard to understand why people make it such a dramatic topic. But also because I loved hearing stories about, people who maybe had a hard time growing up, but then, slowly how they grew to accept their identity, maybe how they saw their identity. And I think that's what started drawing me to it. And then now it's almost 1.5 years ago when we got mixed together into new classes, basically, in school. We'd also talk about that there because just in that new class, the way we were assembled, I don't know, it was just something that we'd also start talking about.
So it was an environment where people were open to discussing these topics and also interested and so on. And I mean, you moved from Kenya to Germany, now nearly 4 years ago.
Yes.
Was. So this whole topic around identity, how did you deal with the change in culture? And was that also something that played into you looking for a community that sort of embraced maybe people who looked different or people who had like a more colorful background or more thoughts on identity?
That's actually a really good question. And I don't know if it really has much to do with the fact that we moved, because I feel like even in Kenya, even if I didn't think too much about it, it was still there
Mm-hmm.
because of the, it was just something normal. I'd read it in books and everything. So I don't know if really started looking for a community which, embraced the diversity, because I already had a community. So I feel like it's just like an extra community or an extra part of my community that came into it.
Yeah, so maybe adding like more to your community that you already had.
Exactly.
Yes. And why do you think it is so important for people to understand their own sexuality?
Well, I feel like it gives you a sense that what you're feeling makes sense, basically. Especially for people who are then surrounded by people who say that it isn't valid, or never have any other input other than the straight input or the cis input, basically. And I feel like for them, if they discover the LGBTQ community, if they finally find like something that where they feel like, yes, that's actually me, I feel like it can add a really good feeling to their hearts and just make them. I feel like it could also give them a lot of a feeling of worthiness, maybe, because they were just, so many people told them that they were wrong. And maybe it isn't important that you tightly say, okay, this is my sexuality, because it can be fluid, of course. I feel like it is important that you see that you are part of a community, like a very broad community.
Yeah, and you say something interesting there. I think there's a big shift from the past, how people, like when I grew up in my early days, sexuality was not a concept that was fluid then. But what I hear you say now, it's okay, you figure out at this point I'm this sexuality, but it might change over time. That's
Exactly.
what you're saying.
Yeah. Or maybe you might discover a different twist to it, basically. You might think you're interested in two genders, or you're interested in all of them, but then you realize maybe that's not it. Or maybe you go from thinking you're only fixed to one gender, and then you notice it's actually a lot broader. It can go either way, or it can go back and forth, whichever.
And what do you think it does to a person's identity to realize that sexuality can actually be fluid?
Well, I feel like it doesn't give you that, it takes away the pressure that you have to find something that like you'll keep to. And I feel like that's also one of those things that some people really need to learn, because I feel like it comes so suddenly, like, oh, there's actually someone that understands me, there's a community there, that they feel like they have to find like that box inside a community that isn't supposed to be, that isn't supposed to be based on boxes. So I feel like clinging to that definitely doesn't give you that, I don't know, that free feeling, basically, that you should get from seeing that and seeing it as being a part of your identity.
So basically, when you realize that sexuality is fluid, you liberate yourself. You can be much freer. Yeah. And I like the idea of having, like, embracing that you change also over time, maybe, and that things become different for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So how is it for you and your peers, let's say in school or in your home environment? How do people, embrace their sexuality? Do they speak openly about it, or is it different for everyone?
Well, I'd say let's start with school. I'd say that we speak very openly about it. I mean, of course, there's always this thing in school that you have like your groups, like the people who you are the most with, who you spend your most time with. And definitely in the group that I feel like I'm a part of, I mean, I do get along with everyone, but of course, I'm also part of a group in a way. And I feel like there we definitely speak open about it. I mean, we also have several groups, so we just chat about things. And it's just we're just very open about it there. And I think it's really something great. Mm. And also at home, I mean, we often talk about what we think about sexuality or something interesting that we've seen on the internet or a great book that we've read about that or something like that. So I'd say generally everything around me is very much open to talking about it. And I feel like it's very interesting because there's so many different ways to see it.
Yeah. And your friends, do they have similar experiences, or have you come across people who really struggle to be open about what their sexuality truly is?
Well, I feel like in school or just generally around me, not so much, at least not that I'm aware of. Because everyone that I know of is very open about it. I mean, one of my classmates is also non-binary and everything, and it's just so yeah, I wouldn't say that directly around me, but they're like people that you talk to like briefly or something where you end up coming to that topic. I've had that once or twice, not very often, admittedly, but they have said that they did struggle a bit with it because of their surroundings and everything.
Yeah. So what I hear you say is also that it's very, I mean, some of us just are already in a community that is very open and that give us the space to just be, and then it's easy to just embrace your sexuality. But when you don't have that, it might be much more difficult for someone to come to terms with it. What I've heard sometimes, especially from older generations, it's like, oh, it's a trend, it's something, it will pass, maybe that person now doesn't like boys, but let the right boy come and she would change her opinion. What do you think about these kind of views?
Well, I think I can kind of see where they come from because many, many people are influenced a lot by the internet. But then again, I feel like sexuality is something that only you can really say how it is. So maybe they're just, from their childhood or generally from their life, they've never had much contact with the thought of sexuality or varying sexualities. So maybe they don't understand it, but I feel like what's important for many people to learn is that even if you don't understand it, is that you can just still respect it. And invalidating other people, I feel like maybe it doesn't have as much of an effect on you. You just think, oh, they're not right. But it can have a huge effect on the person. Maybe they were preparing to come out to you. Maybe they, I don't know, wanted to ask you for advice or whatever.
So you might
yeah.
Yeah, that's a very powerful point that you're making. And I'm thinking of something else that I wanted to ask you, like, if there's anyone who's watching this and feeling like, oh wow, sexuality seems to be something that can also be easy if you are surrounding yourself with the people that are not making a big deal about it or something. But for them, it maybe feels like it's a big deal and they want to figure out more. Maybe they have been, for many years one thing, and now suddenly they realize, oh, I feel maybe I'm not really that. What is your advice on how to go about exploring? How do I really feel? What is my community? How do I want to come out? How would you go about it if you were in their shoes?
Well, I'd say The internet can be a friend, definitely, in this case, for example. But you need to find the right places, because there are many that will just discourage you or confuse you even more. But if you find there are always like really sweet channels that talk about their way or their, I don't know, how they're building up their life with their partner now or something like that, it's very exhilarating to see somehow, because it makes you so happy, because you see that other people, they found themselves, they found a partner, and they're happy with their identities. So that's one thing you could do. You could, of course, just do research. I don't know, Ecosia, Google, whatever you use. Or, of course, books. Those are always a really, really good place to just see other, other ways of thinking, basically, because I feel like in books it's described so deeply that maybe it could help you with your understanding. And there's such a wide and amazing variety of books that you'll definitely have a great time. Or, of course, then TV shows, series, movies, and there are really many examples on that too. And it's getting more and more diverse, which is something really great, I think.
Yeah. And we talked about something the other day that I would also like to bring up sort of as a last point. It's about positive representation, because I feel like there has been a shift. In the past, there was a lot of representation of, the LGBTQIA community struggling, even in movies or in books. And of course, that's still real in so many societies. But there are also stories coming up that are more wholesome.
Yeah.
So what is your take on that? I mean, on the one hand, the struggles, on the other hand, the positive examples, like...
Well, I feel like it needs to be balanced out well, because showing struggles is definitely, it can always give up very, very interesting storylines, I feel. Like there are very many interesting books, movies, of course, some that will make you cry or feel really sorry for the characters. But it's still something very interesting, because you feel like maybe if you struggled in the same way, it might help you understand how other people deal with it or something. But then on the other hand, I feel like positive representation is almost more important, because, and also just casual representation, because like not in a world where everyone is like, oh my gosh, they're gay. It's just because it's not necessary, I feel. So showing the struggles can be important, but I feel like positive representation and casual representation is also almost more important, I feel, because it gives you hope, or it just gives you happiness to see, that, like, I feel like one of the interesting things that I saw about that negative and positive, like the struggle, representing the struggles and representing the good side. I remember I saw this thing about Netflix, about specifically about their animated series part, where they had this one show where they were like both criticized and praised for showing that one of the characters, I can't remember the name of the show, but I remember one of the characters had like a husband in the past, but he died, and just all that struggle and everything. So it was, I think, at least in that part of Netflix, one of the first queer representations. But it was, people were also saying it's just so cliche to have the gay character have their loved one die, have them struggle so much and all that. So and then in that same video, the person was like, they're doing a lot better now, I feel, because they're showing a very good balance of, sure, maybe everything won't work out, or maybe it will be working out, but then it goes wrong, and then it maybe works out again. So I feel like that's a much better balance, and I do definitely agree with that person. I'd say show both the struggles and the good sides, but show the good sides like in a way where you feel like you can't easily, well, maybe not easily, but you can't get from the struggles to the good sides, like it's possible.
Yeah, I get your point, because it's like showing that it's just a natural part of life, just like being straight, or just like
Exactly.
having red hair, or blonde hair, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like, it shouldn't be such a big deal, is what you're saying, and everyone
Yeah.
struggles in their own way, and then but you can also overcome those struggles.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, any final thoughts or advice for our lovely audience about figuring out sexuality, figuring out your identity in that sense?
Well, I'd say, even though it's not the easiest process, don't pressure yourself too much with it, because it's just something that will come, and there are ways that you can make it easier for yourself. Like I said, maybe seeing other people's stories. So just in conclusion, don't go too hard on yourself.
I think that's a very nice conclusion. Thank you so much, Nomzi, for your time.
Of course. I really enjoyed this interview.
Thank you.
Da 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 da! Episode 5 of 3 Candid Questions, Season 2. What did you think while you were listening to Nomzamo? How clear are you about your own sexuality, about your own identity? And how much love do you give yourself? Because I felt that was also like a hidden point in her sharing. Just learn to not go too hard on yourself and just embrace yourself as who you are. I think that's a very powerful message. So feel free to comment, share, and like as always. Feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Sabrina Lindner Coach. We love you.